Before we dive into this wild ride, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Whether it's a quiet cul-de-sac in Arizona, a busy apartment block in New York, or a peaceful lakeside cabin up in Minnesota. I love hearing just how far these Karen tales of chaos and karma can travel. The summer heat clung to the air like a stubborn guest refusing to leave, and the backyard shimmered with golden light. The grill hissed and popped, its flames licking the edges of thick patties, while the scent of charred meat and warm buns drifted across the fence. I stood at the center of it all, wearing a blue apron over my red t-shirt, spatula in hand, proud of the gathering I had pulled together. My neighbors filled the yard, balancing plates, sipping cold drinks, laughing over the low thrum of music and the comforting hum of cicadas. It was the kind of evening you picture when you think of summer, simple and perfect. Then, the shriek of a voice cut through the calm, slicing the laughter clean in half. "You think this is allowed?" I froze for a beat, spatula still hovering over the grill. Heads turned toward the gate, where two figures stood framed in the sunlight. Rachel and Lauren, 40 years old and infamous across the neighborhood, pushed their way in without invitation. Rachel, her floral blouse straining as she planted both hands on her hips, wore an expression that was equal parts fury and satisfaction. Beside her, Lauren mirrored her energy, pointing a stubby finger at me like a courtroom prosecutor. The laughter in the yard died instantly, the warm mood replaced with a cold silence. "Barbecue smoke is a violation of HOA regulations," Rachel bellowed, her voice heavy with the authority she believed she had. "You can't just fill the air with grease and smoke and think we'll let it slide." Lauren leaned forward, her tone dripping with mockery. "Yeah. Do you think your little cookout is more important than everyone else's property value?" Their words crashed down on the party like a sudden storm. My guests shifted uneasily, glancing at one another, unsure whether to intervene or let me handle it. The burgers hissed louder as if protesting the intrusion, the smoke curling upward in stubborn defiance. I kept my voice steady, though every muscle in my body screamed with irritation. "It's a Saturday night, Rachel. It's food, not a chemical fire. Everyone's enjoying themselves. Maybe you should too." Rachel's lips curled, her eyes narrowing to slits. She loved conflict the way some people love wine, slowly savoring every sip. "Don't talk back to me. You're lowering the tone of this entire street." Lauren added fuel, jabbing her finger toward the grill. "That thing's a hazard. You're going to set the whole block on fire. If you don't shut it down, we will." Behind me, someone muttered under their breath, a nervous chuckle escaping, but the tension in the air was thick enough to chew. The guests hung back, unwilling to be dragged into the sister storm. I could feel the weight of every gaze pressing on me, waiting to see if I'd stand tall or fold under their fury. I forced a laugh, though it didn't come naturally. "Relax. No one's dying from burgers. Why don't you grab a plate? I've got plenty." That only made Rachel's face darken, her cheeks reddening like the coals beneath the grill. She took a step closer, her bulk crowding into my space, her perfume fighting with the smell of grilled meat. "You think this is funny?" she hissed. "You're mocking us." Lauren smirked, feeding off her sister's rage. "Don't bother Rachel. He'll cease soon enough. If he wants to play games, we can play harder." The sisters turned on their heels, muttering to each other as they stomped back toward the gate. The sound of their sandals slapping against the pavement echoed like a warning shot. They didn't slam the gate behind them, but the way it swung lazily back into place felt like a threat all the same. The yard was silent for a long breath before one of the guests, a woman in a red dress balancing a paper plate, spoke up softly. "They're unbelievable. You didn't do anything wrong." I tried to shrug it off, spatula still in hand, though my grip had tightened around the handle. "They'll get bored. They always do." But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. The look Rachel had given me wasn't one of idle annoyance. It was the gleam of someone who had already decided on revenge. I tried to focus on the food again, flipping the burgers, setting buns on the warm edges of the grill. My guests cautiously resumed their chatter, laughter returning in small waves as if nothing had happened. Yet every now and then, someone's eyes drifted toward the fence, toward the street beyond, half expecting the sisters to burst back in. As the night stretched on, I caught myself scanning the darkening horizon, listening for raised voices or the sound of footsteps approaching. Nothing came, not that night. But Rachel and Lauren weren't the kind of women to let a grudge go. They thrived on it, nurtured it, turned it into fuel for the next outburst. The memory of Rachel's smirk gnawed at me long after the guests had gone home and the last ember in the grill had died. The way she had leaned toward her sister, whispering words meant for no one else to hear, still echoed in my head. I replayed the moment, trying to catch fragments of what she had said. And then it came back to me with a chill I couldn't shake. "If he won't stop cooking," Rachel had murmured, "we'll make him stop." The spatula slipped from my hand, clattering onto the patio stones. For the first time that evening, the warmth of the grill couldn't touch me. The air felt suddenly cold, as though the night itself had shifted, preparing for something far darker than smoke and sizzling meat. I stood there, staring at the empty gate, and realized the sisters weren't bluffing. They had declared war, and they had no intention of playing fair. The fire I had stoked in the grill that evening had been harmless, even joyful. But the fire Rachel and Lauren were about to unleash, of that, I had no doubt, it would burn far hotter. And I wasn't sure yet if I was ready for the fight that was coming. But one thing was certain, I had no choice but to face it. The following evening carried the same humid weight, but the air was sharper, tighter, as though the neighborhood itself sensed the storm that was brewing. I had lit the grill again, partly to reclaim my backyard from the sour aftertaste of last night's interruption, partly to prove to myself that I would not bend under the Karen sisters' threats. The burgers hissed as fat dripped onto the coals, releasing smoke that curled upward like defiance made visible. My guests tried to maintain their laughter, but every chuckle carried a nervous edge. Everyone remembered Rachel's parting words. Halfway through the night, I caught movement from the corner of my near the fence. At first, I thought it was a curious neighbor peeking in, but the figures were wrong. Too deliberate, too cloaked. Two young men in black hoodies slinked through the shadows, slipping past the gate with the slyness of stray cats. The moment they hit the yard, their intent became obvious. One kicked over a table, sending plates and glasses crashing into the grass. The other lunged at the grill, trying to topple it. The guests screamed as food scattered, drinks spilled, and smoke burst from the grill with a choking cough. "Hey!" I roared, dropping the spatula and rushing forward. My heart thundered against my ribs. The taller of the two shoved the side of the grill, grunting as flames flared. His companion stomped on the fallen food with deliberate malice, grinding burgers and buns into the dirt beneath his sneakers. Their laughter was high, cruel, the laughter of boys who thought they were untouchable. I caught the wrist of the one nearest the grill before he could shove it further, the heat of the metal searing close against my arm. He jerked free and scrambled backward, eyes wide when he realized I wasn't afraid to fight back. Several of my friends surged forward too, forming a wall of resistance. Outnumbered and unprepared for real opposition, the hooded men cursed under their breath and bolted for the gate, vanishing into the night as quickly as they had arrived. The yard looked like a battlefield. Chairs knocked over, food smeared into the grass, drinks soaking into the soil. The grill wobbled on its legs but remained standing, smoke curling lazily into the humid night. My guests huddled together, shaken, whispering questions I didn't have answers to. I stared at the gate, pulse pounding in my temples. Whoever those boys were, they hadn't just stumbled in. They had been sent. By the time the last guest left, murmuring reassurance and unease in equal measure, I had pieced together enough. Whispers carried faster than smoke in this neighborhood, and it didn't take long before a neighbor admitted overhearing Rachel and Lauren boasting earlier in the day. They had bragged, laughing too loudly, about sending some boys to teach him a lesson. The words tasted like ash when they reached me, confirmation of what I had already suspected. I walked straight to their house, rage simmering beneath my skin. Their porch light glowed yellow against the night, and before I could knock, the door swung open. Rachel stood there as though she had been waiting, a sly smile curling her lips. Lauren appeared just behind her, arms crossed, her smirk even sharper. You came, Rachel said smoothly, as if greeting a dinner guest rather than the man whose backyard had just been attacked. I clenched my jaw, trying to steady my voice. You sent those kids, didn't you? Rachel tilted her head, feigning innocence with a cruelty that almost impressed me. Kids? What kids? I don't know what you're talking about. Lauren chuckled, low and mocking. Maybe you're imagining things. A guilty conscience, maybe. The heat in my chest climbed higher, but I forced myself not to explode. That was what they wanted. You don't get to hide behind games. I know it was you. I know you bragged about it. Rachel's eyes narrowed, the mask of false politeness slipping. Listen carefully, she said, her voice dropping to a growl. You don't belong here. You and your ridiculous barbecues are a stain on this neighborhood. Stop now, or things will get worse. Lauren leaned in close, her tone oily with contempt. And trust me, you won't like worse. They closed the door before I could respond, the echo of the latch locking ringing like a final insult. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the wood grain of their door, the fury inside me tangled with something colder, clarity. These women weren't bluffing. They had declared open war, and reason would never reach them. When I returned home, I paced the length of the backyard, scanning the toppled chairs and ruined food. Every detail was a reminder of what I had nearly lost: my peace, my safety, my ability to host friends without fear of attack. And then, as I stood before the grill, an idea began to take shape. If the sisters wanted to fight dirty, I would fight smarter. The next morning, I made quiet arrangements. A set of discreet cameras, barely visible against the siding of my house and the posts of the fence, their lenses angled perfectly toward the grill, the tables, and the yard. They weren't expensive, but they were sharp, reliable, and exactly what I needed. My heart steadied as I adjusted them, testing the angles, ensuring that every inch of my backyard was under watch. If Rachel and Lauren sent their goons again, they wouldn't just be caught, they would be exposed. But cameras alone weren't enough. The sisters needed to be drawn out, tempted into making their move. So, I planned another gathering bigger than before. Invitations went out to neighbors who had witnessed the sisters' antics, people who had grown tired of their antics, but never dared oppose them. I made sure the word spread where Rachel and Lauren could hear it, knowing their pride wouldn't let them ignore a challenge. As the day of the barbecue arrived, the air buzzed with tension. The grill blazed hotter than ever, sizzling with defiance, while laughter and chatter filled the yard once more. The scent of meat, spices, and charcoal drifted down the street, impossible to miss. I kept my eyes sharp, scanning beyond the fences, knowing the sisters wouldn't watch idly. And sure enough, across the way, Rachel and Lauren stood half-hidden behind a hedge, their eyes locked on me. They whispered urgently, gesturing toward two figures lingering nearby, the same hooded goons, their bodies stiff with anticipation. My pulse steadied instead of spiking. This time, I wasn't caught off guard. This time, I had the upper hand. The cameras blinked silently, capturing every twitch, every whisper, every move. And though my guests laughed and chatted around me, a hushed electricity ran beneath it all. Everyone knew the storm was about to break again. I flipped a burger, forcing a casual smile, but inside I was braced like a soldier waiting for the first shot. This wasn't just about food anymore. This was about control, about whether the sisters could bully me into silence, or whether I could finally turn their arrogance against them. And as I watched them whispering orders to their hooded recruits, I realized the moment of truth was almost here. The night cracked open with chaos the moment the hooded figures pushed through the gate. Their sneakers pounded against the patio stones, their shadows stretching long in the flood of backyard lights. One went straight for the table of food, sweeping his arm across it, sending plates clattering and drinks spilling in a glittering arc. The other lunged toward the grill, both hands gripping its edge as though ready to topple it. My guests screamed, scrambling back, some clutching their plates, others frozen in shock. But this time, I didn't flinch. I stepped forward, spatula in hand like a blade, my voice slicing through the uproar. Smile for the camera, boys. The taller one froze mid-motion, his hood slipping just enough to reveal wide eyes. Confusion rippled across his face before the realization struck. His gaze darted toward the fence posts, to the faint, unblinking red glow of a lens. The smaller one swore under his breath and jerked back, scanning the yard as though cameras would suddenly sprout from the grass itself. Around me, neighbors had already pulled out their phones, recording every angle. The air filled with the overlapping clicks of shutters, the glow of screens cutting through the smoke. The boys' bravado drained, replaced with jittery panic. And then came the sound I had been waiting for, the low rumble of engines, the crunch of tires against gravel. The gates swung wider as two uniformed police officers strode in, their expressions sharp with focus, their hands resting firmly on their belts. The hooded figures froze where they stood, their rebellion unraveling in an instant. "Hands up," barked one officer, his voice carrying the authority of final judgment. The boys hesitated only a second before lifting their arms, the fight gone from them. Cuffs clicked around their wrists, the metallic sound as final as a slammed door. The crowd of guests erupted, half in laughter, half in disbelief. Cheers rang out, phones held higher, recording every humiliating second. The officers marched the boys to the side, pressing them against the fence as they began rattling off their rights. And then, like vultures drawn to fresh carrion, Rachel and Lauren stormed into the yard. Their floral blouses strained against their movements, their faces red not with shame, but with outrage. Rachel's voice pierced the night, shrill and commanding. "What do you think you're doing? Those boys didn't do anything. This is harassment." Lauren shoved her way forward, pointing a trembling finger at the officers. "You can't arrest them, they're just kids. You should be arresting him." She jabbed the air toward me, her words spat like venom. The officers exchanged a glance before one turned to me. "What happened here?" I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Instead, I tapped my phone, pulling up the live feed from the cameras. The footage rolled clearly on the screen, the boys breaking in, knocking over food, lunging at the grill. Every detail crisp, undeniable. I turned the screen toward the officers, and then slowly toward the crowd. The reaction was immediate. Gasps, murmurs, and then laughter, rich, unrestrained laughter that swelled like a wave. Rachel lunged forward, desperate. "That's fake." He doctored it. Her voice cracked halfway through, the lie collapsing under its own weight. Lauren stammered, her cheeks blotched red, her words tripping over each other. This is an invasion of privacy." He set them up. The officer held up a hand, silencing them with ease. "Enough. We've got footage, we've got witnesses, and we've got two vandals caught in the act. Unless you'd like to explain why they were bragging about being sent here, I'd suggest you keep quiet." The sisters froze, their mouths open, but no sound coming out. Around us, neighbors were shaking their heads, muttering curses under their breath, some even laughing openly at the display. For years, Rachel and Lauren had strutted around like self-appointed queens of the block, but now, stripped of their bluster, they looked small, petty, weak. The officers didn't let it slide. One turned to Rachel, then to Lauren. "We've also had multiple reports of harassment and intimidation linked to you both. Tonight adds weight to those claims. You'll be receiving citations, and if this continues, you could be facing criminal charges." The laughter swelled again. A woman in a red dress, still holding her plate of food, chuckled loud enough for the sisters to hear. "Guess the HOA can't save you from this one." Rachel's face flushed crimson, her eyes darting wildly as though searching for an exit from the spotlight. Lauren crossed her arms over her chest, shrinking under the weight of 100 eyes. Their reign of intimidation had crumbled in a single night, toppled not by force, but by proof. The officers finished cuffing the hooded boys and led them toward the patrol car waiting beyond the gate. The sisters tried to follow, shouting protests, but were blocked with firm arms and colder stares. Their words grew shriller, more desperate, but no one listened anymore. Their power was gone. I turned back to the grill, straightening it where the boys had shoved. Smoke still rose in thin, stubborn trails. I laid down fresh patties, the sizzle returning like a declaration of victory. My neighbors cheered, some raising cups in salute, others laughing with relief. The mood snapped back, brighter than before, fueled by the delicious taste of justice served hot. One of the officers lingered, eyeing the burgers with a grin. "Smells pretty good," he said. "Best you'll ever have," I replied, handing him a plate. The crowd laughed, the sound rich and full, cleansing the last traces of tension. Even as the sisters stood fuming by the gate, ignored and humiliated, the party roared back to life. Music rose, laughter rang louder, and the grill blazed brighter. It was no longer just a cookout. It was a celebration, a reclaiming of the neighborhood from two tyrants who had finally been cut down to size. Rachel tugged at Lauren's arm, dragging her away from the yard, muttering bitter curses that carried no weight anymore. The sight of them retreating, smaller with every step, etched itself into my memory. I raised my glass, and my guests mirrored me, voices uniting in a cheer that shook the night. The fire crackled, meat hissed, and justice tasted sweeter than anything I had pulled from the grill. As the laughter washed over me, I couldn't resist one final remark, pitched just loud enough for everyone to hear. Funny thing about smoke, sometimes it blows right back in your face. The cheer that followed was thunderous, sealing the night with triumph. And though the sisters had slunk away, humiliated and broken, I knew deep down they would never forget this night, the night their empire of intimidation collapsed under the weight of their own arrogance. The night closed with laughter echoing through the backyard, louder than it had ever been. The grill smoked triumphantly, sending up the rich scent of burgers that now tasted like victory itself. Neighbors clinked cups, the officers accepted plates with amused grins, and the hooded troublemakers sat cuffed and defeated, their swagger gone. At the edge of the street, Rachel and Lauren retreated into the dark, their floral blouses fluttering like tattered flags of surrender, their shouts drowned out by cheers. I raised my glass, smiling at the crowd that had rallied behind me, and let the final words hang in the air with the weight of truth. "Funny thing about smoke," I said, my voice calm and sharp, "it always blows back on the ones who light the fire." The cheer that followed sealed the night, a perfect ending to a battle I hadn't chosen, but had won all the same. And that's how the Karen sisters' little war ended, not with my barbecue ruined, but with their pride served up on a platter. Justice was hot off the grill that night, and trust me, it never tasted better. If you enjoyed this wild ride, don't forget to comment your thoughts. Hit that like button, share with your friends, and of course, subscribe for more stories where justice is always served hot.